I think that a lot of women do go into self-employment because, not that they don't have any option, but it fits around their lifestyle. They might have children or elderly parents, and as such they don't necessarily have the skills and the confidence to go out and sell themselves, which is often quite hard. And I've always wanted to create a safe space where people actually feel welcomed and not under pressure. And I've had some amazing feedback with my latest coffee and chat. And I have seen women come in who were incredibly nervous, who didn't really know what their offer was, and they've had a chance to sort of practice it, if you like, and to speak to other women. It's my contribution to charity work, and I'd rather put on a dinner and entertain people than jump off the side of a building or run a marathon, to be honest.
Welcome to the Small Actions, Big Ripples podcast, where we celebrate the achievements of individuals whose small, intentional actions create waves of positive change. In this episode, I welcome to the studio Kim Gilmour from Connect Marketing to talk about her charity fundraising and her community building initiatives. Kim, welcome.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Thank you for coming along. For anyone listening who hasn't met you before, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what it is that you do?
Okay, well, I am an Essex girl originally, and I came here for a job, and I was actually made redundant before I'd even moved into my house in Shifnal. But I'd already fallen in love with Shropshire. And so I stayed. I've had many different jobs, mainly around marketing, but that wasn't intentional at all. And but it's interesting how when I was made redundant in my late 50s, and I had to pursue a self-employment career. I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do, but when I looked back on my career, all of my jobs had an element of marketing, communication, community building, partnership working, and that's what I found myself heading for, really, to run my own marketing support business.
So you've used all the transferable skills to do your own business and start your own thing.
Yeah, and I always used to love to write, even when I was a child. And I think looking back, I realised that I just loved to write. Mm-hmm. I was always very good at the written exams like RE because I could just tell a story and write it and write it and write it. And I would write poems and cards for my mother, which I found after she died, all my Mother's Day cards and everything that I'd written all the poems in. And so I suppose I really am going back to my roots because of all the things that I do in my marketing job at the moment. I actually mostly like to write.
Great. Now, over the last 20 years or so, you have supported a number of charities with a fantastic event that you've been putting on, the Posh Frocks Gala Dinner. Could you tell us a little about this event, what it is and how did it come about?
Well, when I first came to Shropshire, and one of my jobs, I was working for Telford and Wrekin Council, sort of within the Planning and Economic Development Division, and it was pretty much male orientated. And I think I craved some female business company. I was quite new to the area, and I found the Shropshire Business Women's Society, which at the time was the first women-only networking group in Shropshire. And I don't know, I think at the first meeting I offered to join the committee because the numbers were down. And we used to meet monthly, we used to have speakers, and we had a few social occasions. I remember quite a few cheese and wine tastings and fashion shows and things, but we also had the annual dinner. And when the group sort of folded, mainly because the members had got a bit older, because I was probably 15, 20 years younger than some of them, and they'd retired, it was something that I thought, well, we could carry on with the dinner and then we could all get together once a year. And that's how I sort of took it on. I just didn't want this amazing event to die.
What a lovely occasion and a community building event that has raised a significant amount for charities over the years. Could you remember how much money you raised?
I think it's over 40,000 now, but this is going back quite a long time. But in the last few years, I suppose I've been doing it on my own more or less for the last 12, 15 years. and we try to raise, I don't know, between £2,000 and £3,000 a year, which is not a significant amount, particularly compared to some other people. But it's my contribution to charity work, and I'd rather put on a dinner and entertain people than jump off the side of a building or run a marathon, to be honest.
It sounds such a lot of fun. The charities that you have supported, are they local mainly, or are they further afield?
Yeah, I think there used to be some of the national charities like cancer research, but in recent years I've tried to go something more local. So Seven Hospice, Hope House Hospice, Air Ambulance, British Heart Foundation, the local branch, Alzheimer's UK, Alzheimer's Research UK, the local branch. So because I think that if you've got buy-in to a charity, a local charity like Seven Hospice, people know who they are, or they've used the services, or they know somebody who has. And so that makes people just that little bit more generous when it comes to buying raffle tickets or donating prizes, or just even, getting a table together and coming along.
And now you've had some lovely recognition as well for your work. Most recently, I've seen some posts where the High Sheriff of Shropshire has awarded you a recognition for your charitable work. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was quite surprised to be nominated. I was nominated by Jenny Wynne, who's a Deputy Lord Lieutenant now. And it was lovely. She's been a big supporter of Posh Frocks. She's come along when she and her husband ran a business in Telford, and then she's come along in her official capacity and also just as a friend who brings a table of people. So yes, thank you, Jenny.
And what about the Small Business Sunday award?
Yes, yeah.
What was that all about?
Well, this is Theo Pathetus. People will know him from Dragon's Den, and he has a little competition on social media every Sunday to support small businesses. And you basically put a post about yourself and a nice picture. So something sort of chatty, informal, maybe even humorous, telling people, who you are and what you do. And he chooses just 6 businesses a week. And then he retweets that information, because it always used to be run through X, but it's also now run through Instagram and LinkedIn. So you get the recognition from him. You then get to join a community of other people in a Facebook group and in a LinkedIn group. And then there's an annual event, and I've just not long come back from this year's event, so that's my 3rd event. And you get a whole day of conferences with Theo there, and we had Katie Piper as the guest fireside speaker. And it's just a day sort of inspiration. And I just think, everybody should do it. You should do it, Stavros.
You've mentioned this a few times, and this is it. I mean, you never know. If you don't put yourself out there and push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone, you'll never know.
No, and I got a fantastic picture with Theo, which, I can use over and over again. And, that recognition never goes away.
Brilliant. Looking back over the years at the impact of your work, how does it make you feel?
I don't really think about it. I do stress a lot about putting the dinner together, and every year I think, am I going to do it again? And every year I get such good feedback from the people who go. When are you going to do it, and who's going to be the entertainment this year, and what charity are you going to support? And so I know that there's quite a lot of people who come every year. Or they get disappointed if they're on holiday and they can't come. And I think that's what keeps me going. It's not so much the raising of the money for the charity, although it's nice to do something. And if I didn't do that, what would I do? So I think it's just the feedback that I get from people, that they really enjoy it. And one of the reasons we made it ladies only was because many of the ladies originally didn't have partners. They were divorced or widowed or whatever. And it was somewhere where women could come along and get dressed up, wear their long frocks and put their hair up and get some sparkle on. And you didn't have to come with a man, and it wasn't dancing. It was just literally, a conversation, fun food and conversation. And so we've kept it as women only. And obviously I've got quite a lot of women in my network, in my connections. And so over the years it's changed more from the Shropshire business women more towards, my current connections. And so for me, it's a great networking event as well.
Which brings me on to my next question, because alongside your charitable work, you are involved in a number of other community building initiatives and networking initiatives, including something to do with the canals.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
About the canals? Yeah. When I first was made redundant, I needed to really sort of update my recommendations and things like that, because everything was, very much council based, or the university where I worked or something like that. So I worked for a couple of people. I did some voluntary work for Shropshire festivals. I did some of their social media in exchange, if you like, for a recommendation. And I also did some work for the Canal Trust, because I love walking, I love being outside, and I love heritage and history. And then more recently, I went back to them about 5 years ago, and I said, you're doing lots of brilliant social media posts about the work that's carried out and the work parties and things, but no, you're not reminding people to join as a member, or you're not reminding people to save scrap metal, and you're not reminding them to buy merchandise. And I said, I can do these regular posts, what I call my evergreen posts, which are posts which are repeated every 3 or 4 months, so people don't get bored seeing them, because the chances are they haven't seen them because of the low algorithms and things. But it was an opportunity for me just to help them with a bit of social media. And as things have progressed, I now do news releases for them. And as the site has opened at Wappenshaw Wharf, which is just north of Apley, with a cafe and everything, I've been involved in the community planting and applying for grants and things like that. And they're just such a lovely, lovely group of volunteers. And sometimes history and heritage and conservation are the forgotten charities. It's quite hard for them to get funding because they're not so much people-centred. It's not about youth or elderly or the vulnerable or refugees or whatever. It's more about buildings. And I think it's important that we do conserve history.
Isn't that wonderful? Well done. Now, you talked about creating safe spaces for women. And you talked about your networking event that you do for women in business in Shropshire. What do you think it's important to create those safe spaces for women?
I think that a lot of women do go into self-employment because, not that they don't have any option, but it fits around their lifestyle. They might have children or elderly parents. And as such, they don't necessarily have the skills and the confidence to go out and sell themselves, which is often quite hard. And sometimes people feel overwhelmed if they have to do their 60-second presentation. And I've always wanted to create a safe space where people actually feel welcomed and not under pressure. And I've had some amazing feedback with my latest coffee and chat, it was a continuation of another networking group that folded during COVID. But again, I didn't want it to die out. So I asked if I could take it over, and I did it in my own way. And it's just literally coffee and chat, so people can turn up. Doesn't matter if they come in late because, they've had to drop their children off. Doesn't matter if they have to leave early because they've got a meeting. Everything is very relaxed and informal. And I have seen women come in who were incredibly nervous, who didn't really know what their offer was, and they've had a chance to sort of practice it, if you like, and to speak to other women and to learn from them and to be inspired from them. And we know we celebrate each other's successes, and when people have got issues, there's usually someone around the table who can help them, not necessarily in a paid for environment, but have you tried this, or have you spoken to this person? And I do find generally Shropshire businesses are very supportive of each other, and particularly the business women.
Now, looking at the future and advice for anyone out there listening, and perhaps they've been inspired by your work and they would like to do something similar for their own community, what advice would you give them? How can they get started?
Well, I think the thing is to find something that you're interested in and that resonates with you. And, people will raise money for cancer charities because they've had family members who've suffered with cancer. Or it could be that, a family member is suffering from dementia. So it needs to be something that you're interested in, like me with the Canal Trust. I just saw that there was a gap there. There's so many charities, and we're discovering new ones all the time. And there's new charities being established in the name of somebody, or because somebody felt that there was a need for something, like Little Stars, who look after families who can't even buy the essentials for their children. That charity is only like 5 years old, and that was started by someone who identified a need. So there's all these local charities who want volunteers. You can go and volunteer for the day, for the week. You can put on an event for them. You can run a marathon if you want to. You can jump off a building if you want to. But you can also just donate your time. And I think that it's just nice to mix with other people in a different environment and give them the benefit of the skills. All the business people have got a lot of skills that they can offer. And one of the biggest ones that they can donate is just their time.
It's one of the most precious things we have, time.
Yes.
And if you can give your time and obviously your expertise and your skills, people will appreciate it always. Now, to wrap up, and before we finish, a couple of light-hearted questions for you.
Okay.
If you could invite your 2 dream guests to your next Posh Frocks event, who would they be?
One of them would have to be Dr. Izzy Warren-Smith, and she was the lady who started Women in Rural Networks. And that was the network that I gravitated to, along with the Shropshire Business Women's Society. And it came from some research where she identified that farmers' wives literally were supporting the farms in diversification, but they didn't have the skills, they didn't have the access to funding, they didn't have access to training. And through obtaining a series of grants, she set up the Women in Rural Enterprise Network, or WIRE as we used to call it. And there was at one stage 90 groups around the country of women meeting on a regular basis. And Telford isn't a rural area particularly, but Shropshire is, and we had several groups in Shropshire. And I started to volunteer for one of the groups and then became a joint leader later on, and then this morphed, if you like, into coffee and chat after COVID, but that was over 20 years ago, so it'd be interesting to invite Izzy back. I know she's fully retired now. And then the other person would probably be Deborah Mitchell, who used to be one of our members in the Shropshire Business Women's Society. From the days of her making skincare in the kitchen, we have all watched her grow a multi-million-pound business, and she's such a lovely, humble person. And she always wants to come to Posh Frocks, but she's always too busy.
Incredible. What interesting guests.
Yes.
A couple of quick fire questions to finish with.
Okay.
Tea or coffee?
Oh, definitely tea.
Early morning starts or later in the evening?
I'm definitely a night owl.
And what about heels or flats?
Well, it probably used to be heels, but it's now flats because after COVID, I stopped wearing earrings and high heels, basically, and now both of them are very hard to manage.
Excellent. Well, that's a wrap for another episode of the Small Actions, Big Ripples podcast. Thank you to my guest, Kim Gilmour, for coming on. Until next time, cheerio, and we'll see you soon.